I'm the Knowledge Mobilization Officer at York University, and I've been there for about 3 years now. I'm going to talk a bit today about my background, about my academic background. I'll talk about my undergrad degree, my graduate degree, some of my work experience before coming to the KMB unit, and then my work at the KMB unit as a Knowledge Mobilization Officer. I started out my undergrad in archaeology, but decided it wasn't really for me, so I moved on to anthropology because I found what I was really interested in is studying about cultures of people, and thought maybe anthropology might be a bit of a better fit for me. But it was in the second semester of first year that I took a course on the religions of India and really fell in love with it, and finally decided to stay with this as my major, although I almost had a minor in 2 other subjects. So you can see that I have a lot of different interests, and this was something I'll come back to again. So I spent most of my undergrad studying religious studies, and in particular I was very interested in Zen Buddhism and art as a religious practice in Zen Buddhism. And I did consider going on and doing a master's in this area. But I found that while I found it really interesting and really loved it, I wasn't really sure what it was going to do for the wider community. You know, I could write a couple of journal articles, they'd hopefully get published and get read by a couple hundred people, but beyond that, I wasn't really sure what it was going to do for society at large. And that was something that was important to me. It seemed, for myself, just a little bit sort of academically or intellectually selfish to just focus on my own interests. So I decided to go into library school, and these are just a couple of sort of traditional views of what people think librarians are, but the profession really has changed over the last decade or 2, and it's gone from your kind of the Conan the librarian telling everyone to be quiet to more information professionals. And so what I focused on in library school was things like reference services, helping people find the information that they need, which is something that I do today in a slightly different way, but it's sort of the same kind of principles, and I use some of the same techniques, as well as the more technical services side of librarianship, so cataloging and indexing. And that kind of really spurred my interest in things like social media tools and using the internet to help disseminate knowledge, sort of how to use technology, not just for organizing information, which is still important and something that I still do in the KMB unit, but also using those technologies to disseminate information. So taking some of the more traditional aspects of librarianship but putting a bit of a spin on them. After I got my master's, I worked at 2 nonprofit special libraries. The first one, Alpha Plus Center, is an adult literacy resource center that doesn't exist in its former incarnation today. We used to have a very large resource center of books. It was just a big library, basically, of adult literacy materials, so things for practitioners across Ontario to use. And what they do is you'd have an adult literacy course somewhere maybe way up north in Ontario, and they weren't able to purchase all their own books, so we would purchase them and ship the books out to them. And we were funded by the Ministry of Training Colleges and University. Unfortunately, about 5 years ago, our funding got cut in half and I was laid off, and the library is no longer in existence, actually. I think we were able to ship the books off to the literacy programs across Ontario, which was good that the books are still out there and being used, but it was definitely frustrating. And that's one of the things about working in a nonprofit environment is there's a lot of funding issues that make it difficult to keep going with the work that you've been working on. And then I did a short contract with the CNIB, the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, in their library. And there I worked in collection development, which is basically selecting all the materials to be purchased for the library. And that was interesting, but it didn't satisfy my kind of technical skills requirements. I didn't feel like I was using all my skills. And it was at that time that I noticed a job description for the Knowledge Mobilization Officer at York University. And while they weren't specifically asking for a librarian, reading the job description, I realized what they really need is a librarian. They're looking for someone who can organize their information, but also do some of that information matching. And I think in reference services there's an expression that for every book it's user and every user it's book. And I think that that can be sort of translated into knowledge mobilization, that for every research creator there's a research user, and for every research user there's a piece of research out there for them. So just to talk a little bit about the things that I do in the KMB unit on a day-to-day basis, I do a little bit of the brokering that David talked about. It's usually my manager, Michael Johnny, who does most of that, the partnership brokering. But I do a little bit of that, and I still enjoy doing that because I like to be in contact with the community. It gives me a good sense of what research is out there and what research people are looking for and what the community needs are. Because that helps inform some of the other work I do, which is more of the technical side of the house. So I manage our website, we have a Twitter feed, we have a blog. We've sort of developed, much like our suite of KMB services, we've sort of developed a suite of technological services for knowledge mobilization. And a lot of that is using some of the new social media tools like blogs and Twitter and that. And we've just undergone sort of an upgrade to our website and started using the social bookmarking. And it's been really fascinating to use some of these new tools to see if they can be used to disseminate research and knowledge and partner up people. And that's something that satisfies my needs way back from my undergrad, where I really enjoyed doing research, but I wanted it to have more of an impact in the larger society. So it's great to be able to do research on knowledge mobilization and ways to disseminate knowledge and research, but still be sort of outside of that as well. The only suggestion I would really have for faculty of graduate studies program directors is having more opportunities for graduate students to go out into the community. That's something I didn't really get to do when I was at library school. We had a one-semester course called Special Libraries Practicum, and I think it was 40 hours that we could go into a special library. And a special library is anything that's not a public library or university library. So it could be a corporate library, a library in a hospital, nonprofit organization, but most of the opportunities were in corporate libraries, and that wasn't something that I was personally interested in doing. So I ended up doing one in healthcare, which was very interesting, but I would have really enjoyed being able to go into a nonprofit organization and see a bit more about what their needs were, because it's very different being in a nonprofit library than being, at Sun Life's library. And I think that would be really vital to have that throughout all the programs, graduate programs, is to give students that opportunity to get out there and see, maybe even if you do want to stay in academia, it's still good to see other options and how you can use your skills. And even if you do stay in academia, how you can still keep in contact with the external community.